Hey y'all, who dat, and welcome in. I'm Jeff Nowak. This is Inside Black and Gold. Wanted to hit you with a special edition culled from our WWL Draft Recap show hosted by myself and Charlie Long on the radio this morning. You know, I tried to record it. Funny story. I should have streamed it and saved it that way. You know, I wasn't thinking, but there's literally no way if anyone has an iPhone and has tried to get video, a long video off of your phone to any other service, virtually impossible. So the video is unusable, but I'm going to have a headliner video. It's going to be audio the same way we post a lot of stuff on YouTube. So apologize in advance, but the words are important, right? The words are what you're here for. So you'll have that. Is myself, obviously, Charlie Long, Cullen Steele's our producer, and we went through everything. We went through all the picks, breakdowns. The draft heads actually like this draft class, believe it or not. It's the first time I can ever recall seeing A+ grades handed out. I know Pro Football Focus they said the Saints are one of their 4 teams to get A+. So, hey, take that for what it is. You know, I've been very critical of the Saints draft strategy over the last several years in terms of asset management. And I do think you've seen them change their strategy. Only one trade in this draft. We'll get into it. Just going to go through the list of the picks really quick, and then we'll dive right into the show itself. Obviously, they're over here to my left. If you're watching on YouTube, number 14 overall, Taliesin Fuanga, offensive tackle out of Oregon State. My mock draft pick, you know, you've heard me say this before. I'm going to toot my own horn again. 3 years in a row, got the first round pick right. So, hey, when we go through these mocks, you say they're stupid. I say they're stupid, but hey, sometimes I get it right. Kool-Aid McKinstry, number 41 overall. Saints traded up from 45, but did not give up any future picks, which is what I like about it. And obviously, Kool-Aid, great asset for this team going forward. It drafted on the strength again, but you can never have too many corners, as Dennis Allen says, and I agree with him. The Saints waited a while, then got to number 150 and picked Spencer Rattler. We're going to talk extensively about him later in the show, but a lot of people like this pick. I like this pick. It's going to be really fun to watch him at camp. Number 170 overall. Everything got crazy on day 3. They made all 5 picks that they went into the day with, and some intriguing guys. Bub Means, wide receiver out of Pittsburgh at 170, a guy that, you know, I don't know a lot about. It's going to be interesting to kind of learn about him in real time. Jalen Ford, Texas linebacker. People might recognize that name a little bit more. Obviously had a big role on that Longhorns team that made it to the college football playoff. 199, another mock draft pick. I got correct. I had him at 190 in the trade. It's a whole thing, but 199 technically. Christian Boyd, defensive tackle out of Northern Iowa. And then the final pick, Josiah Ezerim, offensive tackle, Eastern Kentucky. A lot to like, a lot to talk about. So let's dive in. Again, this is myself, Charlie Long, Cullen Steele as the producer. This is called from Sports Talk, WWL Radio, whatever you want to call it, on Sunday morning. It's a long show. We're going to break down all the picks, our opinions, our takes, all that good stuff. Let's do it.
Woo! Good morning. Again, as always, this is fake energy. I am tired, but we're going to go through it. This is the WWL Draft Recap show. It's myself, Jeff Nowak, Charlie Long, Cullen Steele behind the glass. We gave Steve the day off. He's been a busy guy.
Been tripping through it, man.
To recoup some energy, and so we're going to have it for him here on WWL. I hope he's listening. I hope he's having some hot take. But anyway, we have the Saints draft class. This is WWL. We're live on WWLAMFM.com and the Audacy app. We're going to break down all 7 Saints draft picks. Charlie, I hate to break it to you. You lost both bets on Friday.
You lost yesterday, too.
I know, but I got Fridays right because you bet the over. You bet the over on Friday. You bet the under yesterday. Man,
nobody expected them to take 5 picks, but it worked out.
But they did.
The way the board
and
fell,
I'm happy about it.
Yeah,
I'm happy about it.
And once again, circling back around to what Mickey Loomis had said pre-draft, like in his press conference, it was back in I think February or maybe even March, where he said that this is a very deep draft. So it makes sense that they would want to potentially take a lot of picks later on. And I think that what?
Well, I don't know. I think it was more of a strategy thing than a class thing. I think it was more about asset management than this class specifically. But you go on. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, he talked about like this draft class.
I know he did.
Where he said that it is very deep. And so you make 5 day 3 picks and you feel really good about some of those picks. We'll get into it. We'll start at the top and kind of move our way down. But there's a couple of sleepers in there that I think people are going to be really excited about.
Some really intriguing picks in there.
Absolutely.
And so let's just go through the class first off. So we'll just recap. Obviously, first round, number 14 overall, Taliesin Fuanga, offensive tackle out of Oregon State. Charlie, I know you like this pick. I like this pick.
A+.
It's the only ding I give on this pick is not about the pick itself. It is about the scenario the Saints allowed themselves to get into, where they had no flexibility in terms of, well, this offensive tackle is on the board. We desperately need an offensive tackle. We need to take this offensive tackle. Whereas, like, if there was a kind of and there weren't any quarterbacks left on the board. If you had gotten to a situation where there was a quarterback left on the board and someone wanted to make a massive offer to come up and get that quarterback, you wouldn't have been in a position to take it because you'd be like, we need the tackle. And so that's the only. It's not about the pick itself. I ding it down to an A- just because of the methodology it took to get there was a problem to me. Because you can't allow yourself to get into the situation where you have to make that pick, but that's not saying it's anything bad about the pick.
Yeah, okay. I mean,
I just think I like the way they approach this draft, and this is kind of leading into my larger review of, like, hey, I think the way they approached this draft and the restraint they showed in terms of, I think making 7 picks was a lot more about not wanting to dip into your future asset pool to make some of these moves up than it was necessarily, well, this draft specifically, we just want to stay put.
When is the last time you saw a Saints class with the first round, a second round, a third
all their
round,
own,
a fourth round, a fifth round, and a sixth round pick, and a seventh round pick?
Well, I mean, we've seen them have picks in each round, but not all their own picks.
Every
right?
single they can like so depending on what happens with potential compensatory.
If they're the
picks,
worst team in the NFL, they get to pick first in every round, right? Like, put it that way. Like, when's the last time that's happened?
They have all of their picks.
If you're in the worst case scenario, so like think about, like, why did people get so annoyed about the Trevor Penning pick? It wasn't necessarily, or the trade that got you that extra pick to take Trevor Penning. It wasn't necessarily, well, we hate this guy, we hate the idea of going to get him. It was that you traded your future first rounder, which ended up being the number 10 overall pick. So the best pick you've made in a long time, the highest pick you could have made, the Eagles made it because you traded that. And that's the situation you've avoided in terms of, if you end up in the worst case scenario, everything goes wrong, your quarterback gets hurt week 1, your offensive line is in shambles, everything goes just the worst possible way you can imagine, you at least benefit from that.
So you're looking at why they didn't trade into the third or even the fourth round is because it would have probably cost next year picks.
Yes.
You probably have to trade a 2025 third round pick to get into the third round. And they were just like, that's a little bit too expensive. We're going to stay put. We like some of the guys that are falling down the board and that are still high on our board to be there in the fifth round. And they got some dogs. We'll get to it.
Yeah.
Back to Fuaga. Well, actually, first and foremost, the one trade that they did make was, once again, the 45th overall pick, a 5th round pick, and a 6th round pick
this
to
year,
move up and get your dude in the second round. But we'll get to Kool-Aid in just a second.
Yep.
With Fuaga, you didn't move any future assets, which I thought was a huge win. With Fuaga, I think it's a great pick for a couple reasons. As you mentioned, you weren't kind of dinging the pick. You're just kind of dinging the position that they were in. You get the best run blocking tackle in the class. If you were looking at the top guys that were taken, like Joe Alt, and J.C. Latham's a little bit different because he is sort of a road grader. I think that Fuaga is better, but that's besides the point. Olufashinu is not, neither Alt or Fashanu were power players, as Mike likes to call them. They were more kind of technicians. They were better pass protectors. So, if you're Justin Herbert, you're feeling great about Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt on both ends of your offensive line.
I think the Chargers should be really happy.
The Chargers are definitely really happy. And I saw that Jim Harbaugh said, like, they're complaining about weapons. We view offensive linemen as weapons. So they got their weapon, and Joe Alt, a bunch of people were kind of upset that they didn't potentially take a receiver there. Whatever. They got their guy. And then Olufashinu, it's a great depth piece for the Jets because they have these two super old tackles in Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses. If either one of them gets hurt or dinged up,
ready on day
they
one.
are so like they're no longer in trouble because they have someone like Olufashinu. Once again, one of the most polished, if not the best pass pro in this class.
I am slightly disappointed because I did want to see Aaron Rodgers and Brock Bowers, and like Brock Bowers with the Raiders, he's just going to go there and rot. Like, he's not going to have any. Like, I like Antonio Pierce. That offense is going to be in shambles without a quarterback, and so Brock's going to
You're not an Aiden O'Connell believer?
Well, you've set up, we've talked about, like,
obviously.
Okay, why doesn't it make sense to draft a first-round tight end? Because that first-round tight end almost always seems to be playing for another team by the time he's actually ready to contribute at the NFL level. What do you think's going to happen with the Raiders? They're going to struggle first 2 years. He's going to get to that point where you need to sign him to another contract, and they're going to be like, I don't like it. But either way,
Penix would have been a perfect landing spot for the Raiders.
I agree, but they obviously, I do wonder if, they kind of got messed up by, hey,
the run on
There's
quarterbacks
no
in
way
the top 12.
all 6 of these quarterbacks are going to go up in
that
the
didn't
top
work
12,
out for
and then
them.
they did.
But then there was that huge gap. Like there was an ocean of a gap between 12
the
and
longest gap
150.
ever. So you had a draft where, and maybe these two things make sense together. Maybe they do make sense. You had a draft where the most quarterbacks ever in the top 12, 6. And then you had a draft where the longest gap ever between drafted quarterbacks.
6 guys in the top 12. And then Spencer Rattler was the 7th guy off the board at 150.
So from number 12 to 150, that was the longest gap between drafted quarterbacks in the common draft area. But
crazy.
Let's go through. Let's just name the rest of the. We don't have to go through every pick.
Yep.
But I do want to get this list out there so everyone's on the same page.
Okay.
So
and then we'll start talking about the prospects.
Obviously, first round, number 14, Taliesin Fuanga, offensive tackle, Oregon State. No, second round, number 41 overall, Saints traded up from 45, gave away their 5th and 6th rounder, one of them each for this year. And that's Kool-Aid McKinstry, cornerback out of Alabama, a guy that probably goes in the first round if he isn't dealing with an injury. Still ran a 4.40, 4.47 on a messed up foot, Jones fracture. Then the Saints held their water. They did not make a deal to move up into the third round on day 2. On day 3, they sat and waited and waited and waited. 49 picks came off the board, and then they broke the skid and took Spencer Rattler, who we're going to talk a lot about. We don't have enough time to get into him this segment, but we're going to talk a lot about him. We have audio from Shane Beamer, his college head coach.
South Carolina.
One thing that I think is very funny that Spencer said on WWL on yesterday was he was at Manning, and he said it's the hottest place he's ever been in his life, which, y'all, Spencer Rattler is from the desert. Spencer Rattler grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. And I think it's more about the humidity. The funny thing too is I know all about Columbia. My wife is from Columbia, South Carolina, and it's, I would say it rivals New Orleans in terms of humidity. A lot of people might not realize this. It's basically just a scooped out bowl. And it's just the humidity just sits on you. So I have to imagine he has some understanding of what that humidity is like. It's not the top end heat that we might get down here, but it's funny. He's coming from a climate perspective. I would actually compare those two places.
I loved his story, the story that Mike told about the Manning Passing Academy, about how he had to throw, from a certain distance into a basketball hoop, and all the people of the Manning Passing Academy were booing Spencer Rattler when he had to go up, and then he just drilled it, and then he won. I think Rattler said it was like
chicken,
5,000 or some kind of certain amount of money worth of Cane's chicken or something like that. So, and he gave it to his sister because his sister loved Cane's, and it's a funny story.
Happy for him. Okay, let's keep going. So they made all 3 5th-round picks that they had. They traded one of them away.
Super surprising.
So they had the number 170 pick. They spent it on Pittsburgh wide receiver Bub, B-U-B, Means, which seems like a win for Bub's Burgers. Just saying. I think there's some sponsorship opportunities there.
So he explained the story behind his name, and I still don't entirely understand.
Well, he's a junior, right? So he has the same name as his dad. I think it's Jerome.
Yeah.
And so it's just one of those situations where that's just the nickname he had.
But he told the story behind his nickname.
Yeah.
I think his nickname was Bubble, and then it got shortened to like Bubba, and then it got shortened to Bub. So he just goes by Bub.
Yeah, so you got a Kool-Aid and a Bub.
Yeah, that's kind of fun, huh?
It's a fun little draft class. This is an all-name draft class.
Oh, for sure.
Okay, so keep going. Number 175 overall, last pick in the 5th round, Jalen Ford, linebacker out of Texas. I really like this pick. I think this is a high-character
We'll get
pick.
into it.
He's a winner. I think he's going to be a guy that, I don't know if he's going to impact this team that much this year. I think he's going to be a special teamer, but he's going to make this roster, first of all. And
Agreed.
That's not a given for a late 5th round pick.
No.
He's going to make this roster. He's going to be an impact on special teams. And I think 3-4 years down the road, you're going to be talking about a guy that can step in, whenever DeMario does retire, right? I think DA joked yesterday he's going to play until he's 50, or he thinks he's going to play until he's 50. But you do have to start kind of figuring out what your depth chart is with him. And I like that draft pick a lot.
2-time first-team All-Big 12 member at Texas at linebacker, and Mike said that he could kind of see him as a Sam for the Saints, but he was talking about it.
I think he could play all 3 spots.
Exactly. He was talking about he could play wherever he wants, wherever the coaching staff wants him to play at the linebacker position, but he said he's the most comfortable at Mike, which I thought was pretty interesting. We'll see. They obviously have a plan for him, bringing him in. You said special teams is something that he would probably start off doing, but once again, there's a role for this guy, and I think that, as you said, like, it's not a guarantee for a 5th-round pick to make a roster. But I think if I were a betting man, I would definitely put some money on Jerome Ford.
Yeah, and we have the audio from
Ford,
his interview with local media after he was picked. I did have to break the news to him that Lil Wayne is not a Saints fan.
He's a Packers fan.
Yeah, he was surprised by that because he was talking about, oh, yeah, I love Lil Wayne. I'm like, I hate to break it to you, man.
Yeah.
He has a song called Go Pack Go.
Oof.
You're not going to love it, but hey.
Yeah. Jalen, and just talking to the guy, I mean, we'll play his audio later.
Yeah.
As you kind of mentioned, great character, dude. He's definitely
it's easy to understand why they were drawn to him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, two more. And, I'm usually pretty good at the first round mock draft picks. I fall off as you get to the middle round. But I did hit this one. I had him at 190. They ended up trading 190 and picking at 199. So I did miss the actual pick by 9.
Boyd?
But I do feel good about it because one of my picks in my mock draft was defensive tackle Christian Boyd out of Northern Iowa. I asked Dennis Allen if, is it a situation where, when you go to these small schools, you kind of feel good about the prospects, you feel good about the reviews you're getting from the coaches, and maybe that's why you would land a second Northern Iowa player in a couple of years of draft picks. He said no, it's just a coincidence. But I do like that pick. He joked that they got Trevor Penning a little buddy. That's a quote. I would argue that little is relative in that because these are not little men. These are gigantic men. He set Northern Iowa's bench press record. He didn't even realize there was a record that he was breaking until afterward. But he's a big
38
dude.
reps on the bench.
Yeah, strong, older. I think he's 24 right now, so he's a guy that you should expect to come in and have a little bit more maturity. I do like that pick a lot.
He was one of their top 30 visits, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and once again, what we had said back on, Thursday now, that like top 30 visits does not mean first-round picks. This is guys that you're interested in at any point in the draft process. And Christian Boyd garnered a lot of interest from them. They go out and pick him in the 6th round. He wasn't a combine guy, but he was a guy that kind of like in his offseason, like the pro day and the camps that he was at, like he just showed up like a man, Jeff.
He's a big dude.
He's a big dude for one, but you get like a run-stuffing defensive tackle with a pretty high ceiling in the 6th round. I think that is great value. It is a solid pick once again.
And it's a need, too. I mean, I think he's going to get into that rotation. There's guys like Jack Heflin, guys who have been around, but, he's going to compete for that spot, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up taking the Malcolm Roach.
And his mentality, just talking with him after he got picked, he was talking about, having the mentality of being in the trenches.
Mentality.
Yeah, the trench mentality. And he's used the quote of going against grown-ass men. Like, that is, great mentality. Trying to feed their family. He needs to kind of show up and be prepared and come to work. Yeah. I'm very, very high on Christian Boyd.
I agree. And then the final pick, 7th round, 239. These are picks that have basically, hey, what UDFA do you not want to have to negotiate with? Like, what UDFA do you want to just get it over with now? And they picked Josiah Ezirum, offensive tackle out of Eastern Kentucky. He's a guy who started as a defensive tackle. He played his first 2 seasons at defensive tackle and then switched sides of the ball. We talked a little bit yesterday about arm length, right? Taliesin Fuanga's arm length might be on the shorter side of what you'd look for. It's like 33 1/8. Well, Josiah's arm length is elite, right? You're talking 35, 36 inches. And, I think that's what you're looking at with him is just you try to find an elite trait late in the round, and that's what you have. And, I don't think he's a guy who's going to impact this team much. He might not even make the roster. He might be a practice squad guy.
Yeah.
But I do think that that's a good pick late in the draft where, you're just looking for a shot that you can develop a guy, dev traits, and I think that's what that is about.
Developmental piece, like you said, it's a perfect way of putting it. I'm trying to double check here. I think it was John Hendricks that had put out that he had worked with Jari Evans in the offseason, which is kind of interesting. I'm forgetting which exact bowl or camp or whatever it was at. But he had worked with Jari, and maybe this was Jari Evans saying, I really, really like this guy. I like his ceiling. Like, let's go get him. But yeah, it's rounding out, 7 picks taken.
For the second year in a row.
Yeah, from, first round pick, second round pick, big gap from 45 all the way to 150. But then you get some great value picks from 150 all the way into the 7th round. 7 picks taken, Jeff. It's a little bit surprising. I think they entered it with 9 picks. Once again, we didn't expect them to take 9, but I don't think I really expected them to take 7. And you're talking about 7 guys that, each of these guys has an argument to come and compete and get that roster spot, especially those top picks off the board. Like, I don't know, Jeff. I think it's a definite win.
And the fascinating part is that how many analysts love this draft. You get used to people hating the Saints draft.
Well, I think they made some great value picks.
Yeah, they did.
Fuaga was
people love the Rattler pick.
Yeah, because Rattler was seen as a day 2 pick. He was seen as maybe a late second, early round 3 guy, and that's kind of where I saw him as well. Like maybe Michael Pratt, who fell into the 7th round. Is like the quarterbacks.
He was in a pool when he got
picked. The quarterbacks were crazy this time around. 6 quarterbacks in the top 12, and then Rattler, who was on most people's boards a 2nd, maybe 3rd round pick, falls all the way into the 5th, and not even like the middle of the 5th. And the Saints are just like, okay, we'll take him.
Yeah.
Like on some big boards, I'm sure people had him in maybe the 70s to 80s or something like that. He's at 150.
Yeah, that's
you
nuts.
You want to talk about value? Yeah, that's.
I do. Yeah, you love it, and there's a lot to like. Anyway, we're going to go through the UDFAs. There are 15 of them, and at least one that I feel really good about in terms of, this is a name you might remember because he's made big plays. There are 15 of them. The Saints agreed to terms with all of these players. It's official as of last night. So we're going to go through them all. We don't have time to get deep into every single one, but I do want to name them all for people listening in case there's some names on there that you're excited about. We did get a text already about this first player, so we'll get into him first. And this is a player that I feel like, in terms of need, in terms of, upside, I think is really intriguing. And it is Dallin Holker, tight end, Colorado State. You might recognize that name if because if you recall, Colorado was the talk of the town early in the season, right? That they had that crazy game against Colorado State. I think it was double overtime, triple overtime. Dallin Holker is the one who caught the Hail Mary pass in that game to extend it for Colorado State. And, you may also remember at the Combine, he accidentally caught 2 balls in a drill that he was only supposed to catch 1. So he caught some attention that way. Obviously, as you can probably infer from that, he's got good hands, right? He's an athletic guy, although his RAS score was a little lower than you probably would expect for the Saints to target. I think they got somebody there.
To my fellow NFL Stock Exchange fans, I think that they call him the Incredible Hulker.
Nice.
And I think that was kind of a guy that I was surprised didn't get drafted. I mean, with this tight end class the way it was, once again, there was Brock Bowers in the first round, and then there was a big gap. And I thought that a lot of people figured that Jatavian Sanders from Texas would be the second guy off the board. He was, in fact, not. It was Ben Sinnott from Kansas State. And Jatavian Sanders ended up going to Carolina with the first pick of the 4th round. I thought that was good value for them. How many tight ends were in total were drafted in this class?
Putting me on the spot.
No, I would have to double check because I want to say that there was kind of a late run on them a little bit.
That makes sense because I just feel
it wasn't a great class for tight ends. So if you're wanting to go get a guy, you can go spend a late pick on him. No one ended up spending a pick. Colin's just letting me know in my ear. 12 total. So 12 tight ends were taken after, one was taken on day 1. I think 2 were taken on day 2. So, yeah, you're looking at 10 guys got selected on day 3. And Holker was not one of them. So
Cade Stover was, and they had a lot of talk around him.
That pick was so stupid.
Messing with Bulls.
No, I mean, I think it was like Cleveland sent that pick to Houston, and then Houston sent it to Philly, and then Philly, as part of their one of their 9 draft day trades or draft weekend trades, sent it back to Houston. And it's just like the draft is so silly at times. So, Cade, I mean, a lot of tight ends taken. Holker was not one of them, surprisingly enough. So I'm sure the Saints really jumped on that and got him as one of those early unrestricted free agents, undrafted free agents.
No doubt. So you also have the, we already got the kicker, in terms of the kicker competition. It's every year you bring in a kicker to punter.
Have to.
You brought in Charlie Smith, the international guy. So you could consider him one of your UDFAs, technically a free agent.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like Gaelic football. We talked to Darren Rizzi about this. The funny thing about Gaelic football is they don't get paid. Like, they don't get a salary for Gaelic football. They make a ton of money in endorsements, but they'll play in front of 80,000 people, and everyone in the building is getting paid more than they are. Whoa. They're celebrities, right? Because it's such a massive thing there, but they don't even make a salary. Everyone knows who Charlie Smith is in Northern Ireland.
That's funny.
No one here knows who Charlie Smith is. Anyway, he's the kicker, but he's not a UDFA. He's just a free agent that they already brought in. The punter, Matt Highball. I need to look up how to say his name. I'm choosing to say Highball because that's what it should be because he's a punter.
That's a good name for a punter.
It is. Either way, when you have ball in your name and you're a kicker, like Brian Longwell was always my favorite for a kicker name. David Akers was really good too. Anything about distance as in terms of like
David Akers.
And then there was like Taylor Blewett, which was like, oh man, that's a rough name for a kicker.
What was Badgley? They call him the Money Badger.
The Money Badger?
Yeah, I love that.
Except he misses.
Yeah, exactly. So it makes it even
more
funnier.
Like Madgley, because he always misses and makes you Madgley. Anyway. Hey, okay, so moving on. Matt Hayball out of Vanderbilt. He's the punter. I think there's a competition to be had there. I know, I wasn't as negative on Lou Headley as some others. I think he had a better season than he got credit for, even though the distance wasn't as exciting as you probably got used to Blake Gillikin. I think he still wins that job, but it'll be interesting to watch that competition. Moving on, Jermaine Jackson, in terms of, like I said, all name draft.
Mm-hmm.
All name draft. Jermaine Jackson, wide receiver out of Idaho, not Ohio. You look at this and you say, okay, every year, the Saints, they got to find at least one return guy. You bring in a punter, you bring in a kicker, you bring in a return ace. That's what you have there.
Rashid Shaheed worked out pretty well. And
yeah.
Deontay Hardy before that.
Well, and like Darren Rizzi said, now you have two returners on kickoffs who you need both of them to be elite guys so they can't try to avoid your elite returner. Yeah. And so maybe that is an opening for another. Last year they brought in Malik Flowers and he didn't make the roster, but maybe this is a year where you can find a spot for a second return ace. I don't know. But Jermaine Jackson, wide receiver at Idaho, he had 4 return touchdowns. I think they were punt returns. But yeah, he's just a speedster. He's 5'7", so he's in that Deontay Hardy mold.
Yeah, exactly.
Keeping going, Noreddin Nuili, I'm sorry, I probably butchered that name, offensive lineman out of Nebraska. Any thoughts on him before we go on?
No, I mean, we're just rolling right along, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of these names. We'll dive into them more as camp gets here. Rookie camp's going to be coming up shortly, and we'll get in a little more information about them. But a guy I do like, Mason Tipton out of Yale, fast dude. I believe he ran a 4.3 40. A lot of people are high on him, so I'm interested to see what he looks like. We obviously talked about Holker. A guy I'm eager to talk to Cullen about. I know Cullen has some fun facts about this next guy. Kyle Sheets, wide receiver out of Slippery Rock.
Slippery Rock University.
Yeah, tell me about Slippery Rock. Tell me about more so. What's the mascot's name?
It's Rocky. It's like a lion because he's the pride.
He's a lion.
He's a lion. Yes, it's not a rock.
I thought he was an actual rock.
I assumed so too, but it's a lion named Rocky.
Can you imagine a team mascot's just a rock?
I thought it would be like a rock that they poured water on.
Yeah, same. I thought it was like a very slippery rock.
Yeah.
Oh, no, come on. That is the...
Well, I mean, Clemson, they have like a magic rock.
But they got the Tigers. You have to have something.
That's true.
Right?
The rock isn't the mascot.
You can't just have a rock.
They'll just rub it.
Okay, isn't Stanford like a tree?
Yes. And they're the cardinal, but
it's a tree.
I've always assumed it was I've always assumed the bird is somewhere in there.
I don't know.
Yeah, but
maybe it's got a nest in the tree.
Isn't the mascot a tree? I remember the mascot being a tree and
Right, but I just assumed there's a bird in there somewhere. Is that not what it's supposed to be?
Well, Slippery Rock University is an hour north of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Yeah, so here's the thing about Kyle Sheets is Emory Hunt, a former UL grad, go Cajuns, talked about him as one of those really, really deep sleepers that he likes a lot. And this is a guy that, once again, Slippery Rock doesn't have any type of pro day. So he shows up to Temple's pro day, and he kind of participated there and impressed a lot of scouts. And he ends up not getting selected. He's got great size, 6'4", 220, Jeff.
Wow.
Yeah, he's a really big dude. Ran a 4.5, 240, 37-inch vert, benched 225 pounds 16 times, and measured in at 10 feet and 2 inches in the long jump. So, yeah, I mean, this is kind of a sneaky little pick. And he had great production at Slippery Rock. Once again, it's a Division II school, a Division II football program. There's probably the reason that he didn't get drafted. But it's a sneaky little pickup as an undrafted free agent. This is kind of like you talked about Holker was your guy. I'm putting my name attached to Kyle Sheets and hoping that he does well. And I'm getting – because he got the Emory Hunt seal of approval. So, Emory, I'm right there with you.
All right, let's just go through the rest of the names quickly. Nathan Latu, defensive end out of Oklahoma State. He's not related to Latu Latu, who was the top defensive end off the board in this draft, but he is related to Cam Latu, who was the tight end out of Alabama last year.
Yeah.
So it is a there is a legacy going on there. He's a really intriguing guy. He's an edge rusher, but he's a little smaller than the Saints would typically go for, 6'4", 250. More of an athletic guy. So it'll be interesting to watch. Maybe a practice squad candidate. TCU safety Millard Bradford's another one. Another fun name to say. Your annual, we got a Tulane guy, right? Offensive lineman, Sincere Hainsworth.
A guy that Mike had said he's maybe a little bit undersized, but he's a great leader up front.
I think he's a guard. I think he's a guard prospect.
Yeah, I would agree. So, but, I mean, as a center at Tulane, he was like the guy calling all the shots for that team.
Right.
I know that Matty Hudak was really high on him as well. Mike Detillier just really liked how much of a leader he was up front, but once again, he is a little bit undersized for a center.
I think there's a spot to be made on this roster for a guard. right? So if you're competing at guard and you look at UDFAs, you're like, okay, how do they make the roster? I think if you're a guard coming into this roster, there's spots to be won.
Which is interesting because the 7th round pick that was used on Zerum, I think that the plan for him is what DA had said is that he's going to be a tackle. Like he came out as an offensive tackle prospect. Obviously, Fuanga, you expect to be the right tackle of the future for this team. Maybe if like Ramczyk works out with him, like maybe he could start as a guard.
Yeah, I don't
but
think so.
I don't think so either. I think you want him where he's the most comfortable, and that's at right tackle.
I agree. Okay, so just going through Kyler Baugh, defensive tackle, Minnesota. Charlie, a guy that you're going to want to stand for, but we don't have time right now. We'll come back and talk about it later. Running back, Jacob Caboti out of UL.
Cajuns.
Raging Cajuns. He had Lawrence Johnson.
Like getting those local prospects.
Yes. Lawrence Johnson, defensive back out of Southeast Missouri State. Rico Payton, defensive back out of Pittsburgh State. Isaiah Stahlberg, linebacker out of South Dakota State. And I believe that is the list. That is your UDFAs. There's obviously going to be some rookie camp invites. We're going to be out there. We're going to talk to a lot of these guys. But interesting class, UDFA class. You know, this is going to be a tough nut to crack for the Saints with 7 draft picks that you're competing with. But, you know, there's some interesting names on there.
I agree 100%. I think that, you know, once again, the UDFAs, how many of them will we end up carrying? Not really sure, but there they are, and we'll kind of get more into the draft picks on coming up here, Jeff.
Before we get too separated from the conversation, I dug a little bit thanks to a caller. The cardinal isn't a bird. It's referencing the color for the Stanford team.
I know.
And apparently, the tree isn't even the mascot. It's like the tree is like a member of the band who's been mistaken for the mascot. So they don't even have a mascot. It's just like the Cardinals is a color.
The tree's a member of the band?
Apparently. Which makes even less sense to me now.
Stanford nerds. Anyway, go hang out with Cal. Fight over an axe. You know, we talked a lot about the Saints draft class. There was another Louisiana guy who went in the draft, shipped up to Buffalo.
First pick of the 2nd round.
He's got fans already.
I love Keon Coleman.
Coleman. And I don't know if you heard it, but he started off his introductory press conference with the Bills media in the most Louisiana way possible, right? Opelousas. You can take the kid out of Opelousas. You can't take the Opelousas out of the kid. Yeah, let's hit that clip.
Coat from there,
Huh?
Got you a coat from here?
Nah, man, you forgot I went to school in Michigan for 2 years? Guess where I got this from, though?
Where you get
I'm saying you gotta guess. You're gonna be wrong, though, but guess.
time is up.
Nah. Macy's. What you mean? They be on sale on the rack, all the colors.
Right. Exactly.
Look, $79, $89. Nice little deal. You can get the trench coat for like $100. Nice little. I'll take you there personally. I might go get some more colors. I need a blue one and another red one.
Got you. I'm with you.
Just good Thanksgiving sales too. That's what I usually do.
See, I ain't know nothing about Thanksgiving. I shop like my mom. I get my coats in the summertime. You gotta shop a season or two before, just in case, you know, and they be cheaper. Cause you go at Thanksgiving, everybody in Thanksgiving, you know what I'm saying? Who we starting with? Oh, we could go. Oh, my bad. Hold up. Y'all can hear me? This on or this off? All right, bro. I'm just making sure. I'm hoping you ain't trying to set me up. Who we got going first?
It's so good. And the funny thing about it, you can't see it in the clip. They're talking about his jacket,
yes.
Right? And I think the reason they're pointing it out is because he's wearing a puffer jacket in like the end of April to May. But he's in Buffalo, so it's cold.
Yeah.
You know, like it's not cold. To them, it's not cold.
Opelousas Catholic boy. Like,
to us.
It's so awesome.
You know,
it's so funny.
What's the current temperature of Buffalo, New York?
Yeah, he is a thrifty gentleman as well. Like I love that term because he's talking about he gets his coats in the summertime just like his mom. It's so funny.
Yeah, it gets down into the 50s in
Keon
May
Coleman's
in Buffalo.
a character. He goes to Michigan State for the first 2 years. That's why he kind of mentioned. You forgot I was in Michigan?
Well, he asked who he thought gave him the jacket, and the guy said Tom Izzo.
Oh, okay.
That's why he was like, no, Macy's.
Yeah. That's funny. So he started out in Michigan State, comes down to Florida State. I think that Mike kind of talked about Keon, and he's just like, yeah, LSU was a little bit late on the process of trying to get him, and then he burned them in week 1 of just this past season. So Keon Coleman goes to FSU, has a little bit of an up and down season, but he was a legit prospect. If you're talking about the top receivers in this class, like you could not leave his name out of the top 10.
He was my mock draft. He got to me at 45 in my mock draft. It was a no-brainer. I took him. He did not get past pick number 33 in the draft, as we probably should have seen coming. Great pick by them. They traded back and still got him.
Yes.
But no, it's a great rooting for Keon. I'm looking forward to seeing him up there with Josh
I
Allen.
saw like the NFL.com comp for him was like Drake London or something like that.
I can see
It's
that.
just like, yeah, I could as well. I really like that someone comped him as Keenan Allen. I think that Keon Coleman, he's going to be a really successful receiver. I would be willing to put my personal bet on that.
I agree with that. I'm looking forward to watching him.
All right, that's going to end that segment. Obviously, a lot of information. Obviously, we obviously got into a lot, and there's a lot more to talk about. So we're going to hit a break. We're going to come back. It's going to be the Spencer Rattler hour it's going to be the Spencer Rattler segment as I think is deserved for this. So again, this is Inside Black and Gold. We'll be right back. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. It's another segment culled from our WWL Draft Recap show. This is going to be primarily about Spencer Rattler. This entire segment, we're going to talk about the quarterback the Saints picked at 150. You know, people probably remember him at Oklahoma. He kind of fell off the map a little bit when he went to South Carolina because they weren't contending for much, but really intriguing. A guy who at one point was thought of as a no-brainer first-round pick when he got to the end of his college career. And the talent is there. There's a lot more that goes into it around that. But we're going to hear from Shane Beamer, who was his college coach at South Carolina, who, you know, I think addressed that whole situation, the whole Netflix stuff, pretty well. So without further ado, let's dive into that. Here you go.
And we're rolling into hour 2 here. Okay. Did some jumping jacks in the corner. We're going to make it through this. Charlie, how you feeling? You doing good?
Rock and roll. Let's keep
All
talking
right.
about this good draft class, Jeff.
A fun
I'm feeling
draft
great.
class.
I gave it an A, and there's a reason for it. I really did
I'm
love a lot
proud
of
of you
picks.
for giving it today.
I mean, a lot of places are. I think PFF gave it an A+.
Right.
PFF gave it one of 4 teams to get an A+.
And they hate the Saints draft strategy. Like, it's so funny. Like, all these draft heads hate how the Saints operate. And I was beginning to think that they just had no, ability to actually appreciate what the Saints did because they were just so mad about it all these other years. But hey, it doesn't mean anything. I disagree with them most years, but hey,
Value.
Value.
I will pound the table on the value picks that the Saints made.
Speaking of value picks, okay, I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Charlie Long, Colin Steele. We're value picks, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Another value pick, Spencer Rattler, 150 overall. This is kind of going to be the Rattler hour, as you called it, because for good reason. I think a lot of Saints fans are excited about Spencer as an option, as a prospect, as a developmental quarterback. And the nice thing is you got him in the 5th round, so there's not a lot of pressure. You don't have to expect him to be the guy right away, but there's talent there. Like DA said, it's a guy who a couple years ago, before there was a lot of this
slam dunk
adversity,
first-round pick.
people are talking about number 1 overall.
Yes.
Like legitimately, you had mentioned Shadir Sanders as the early number 1 overall
so
pick.
let me
kind of
explain
reminds
that
me of
real
that.
quick. Was that they're looking ahead to the 2025 draft, and
Yeah.
the early betting favorite to be the number 1 overall pick is Shadir Sanders
Which is crazy.
from Colorado, which 100% is crazy.
But
like,
I mean,
they also had Carson Beck and Quinn
Yeah.
Ewers, like Carson Beck from Georgia, Quinn Ewers from Texas in that conversation. I remember really thinking it was funny that the combines that A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy had, like the person that hurt the most from this was Quinn Ewers, the guy that
Yeah.
was throwing to them. So we'll see what happens this year in college football. And obviously, there's always a person that stock just skyrockets, like Jaden Daniels, the number 2 overall pick in this class after
That's
winning
why
the
it means
Heisman.
nothing,
It means
right?
100%. It means nothing. So someone who's going to come out of nowhere and be one of those top 3 picks for 2025. But as far as you're talking about Rattler.
Yeah.
At a time, he was the top prospect coming out of high school. He goes to Oklahoma.
A golden
and then,
arm guy, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and people will kind of point to like the QB1 stuff and like the tape that he has when he was younger, and that it doesn't look very good about how he kind of treated the people that he was around and stuff like that, and his
It was
character
rough.
concerns.
It was
really,
rough.
it really was. But there's something to be said about being humbled a little bit, and I think when Caleb Williams went to OU, because let's kind of talk down the timeline of
Guy
what
who
happened
never
with
got
Spencer
humbled.
Rattler. Well, yeah, Caleb Williams goes to OU to work with Lincoln Riley. He takes Spencer Rattler's job at OU,
Yeah.
and then Lincoln Riley goes to USC, and Caleb follows him there. He wins the Heisman there. He becomes the number 1 overall pick. That's what it is. What Rattler ends up doing when he leaves OU, he goes to South Carolina, and he ended up kind of having a much more...
with Shane Beamer, a guy that he obviously had worked with previously.
Yes, but it was a much quieter kind of road for someone like Spencer Rattler.
Everyone gave up on him.
Yeah,
Everyone gave up on him.
100%. Versus someone like Caleb Williams, who went to USC to stay with Riley, ends up winning the Heisman, ends up being the number 1 overall pick the next year. So it's got to be pretty humbling, especially because he got taken in the same draft class as someone that took his job. and became the number 1 overall pick. And he goes at 150 after a lot of people projected him to still be a second, third round pick. He falls all the way into the 5th. So you talk a little bit about the potential boom with this pick, in this player. But at the same time, if it doesn't boom, it's a 5th round pick, Jeff.
Right.
Like, you took a very high ceiling player in the 5th round, someone that you didn't expect to be there. Once again, drafting best player available on your board. Like, when we were previewing day 2 and talking about round 2, we talked about all these positions that the Saints could possibly fill with this 45th overall pick. They end up seeing, and I think John Hendricks tweeted this out about Kool-Aid, was the number 2 guy on their board entering day 2.
Day 2, right.
And he fell, to 41. They had to go up and get him. So they made sure that they went up and scooped him up. I think they jumped the Texans at 42, I believe, who would have probably taken a cornerback at that spot.
Yeah.
So you went and secured your guy. With Rattler, once again, like a very high ceiling prospect, best player available on their big board, and they got him in the 5th round.
And they didn't have to trade up.
Value. So
I mean,
Now-
you talk about Kool-Aid real quick, just to recap, everybody. 41, that was us taking Kool-Aid. 40, Cooper DeJean, CB.
Yeah.
The pick after us, cornerback, and the pick after that, cornerback. So he could have been gone at 45.
Cooper was a surprising fall.
I think it's very likely he would have been gone, right? Like
100%.
I had people say, "Oh, why did you spend assets to go up to 41?" It's like, because you didn't think he was going to be there, and there's
At
good
45.
reason to think that, considering the picks all around him were cornerbacks.
Well, the
There was
run
active run on cornerback
early in the 2nd round was defensive tackle and receiver. The first 7 picks were defensive tackle and receiver, and then there was kind of like that mini run on cornerback. So if you wanted to go secure, once again, the number 2 guy on your board entering day 2, they had to go do it. But we're talking a little bit too much about Kool-Aid. I was just kind of talking about
this is the Rattler hour.
The Rattler
Charles.
hour, correct. The Rattler hour, as we call it. But, I mean, that's just what you talk about when you're talking about Spencer Rattler at round 5 at pick 150 is the value. The value was there. Like, this was a guy that was probably in the 70s or 80s on a lot of big boards. Once again, a former, as you mentioned, number 1 overall pick projected. And he kind of follows a little bit of a humbling path after what happened at Oklahoma, where he gets benched. Caleb Williams takes his job. He goes to South Carolina. He ends up being a day 3 pick. But he's still got that ceiling. He's still got the talent.
You say day 3. Like, day 3 could be 5th round, mid-5th round.
Yeah, 5th round pick.
And I'm a little biased because my dog is a big Gamecocks fan, right? So I'm not making that up. She has a Gamecocks collar.
Describe that.
But my dog,
Your dog's a...
big Gamecocks fan. Yeah, she runs around the house going, game.
She's not a UConn
Say, like, I
fan?
don't... Yeah.
No, she's a Gamecocks fan. Yeah,
Okay.
She runs around the house go game, and I have to yell Cox. That's the cheer. Yeah,
Okay.
It's a whole thing. I tweeted a picture yesterday. She wears a Gamecock collar. It's a thing. Anyway, I'm biased, so I want to let Dennis Allen tell us why he felt like
Yes, sir.
Spencer Rattler was the right pick at 150. Charlie or Cullen, can you hit that?
The quarterback position is kind of funny in terms of the draft, and where people see guys and where you go and take them. I mean, obviously with so many quarterbacks going early in the draft, then there was a lot of other positions that now became available throughout the rest of the draft. And I just felt like, look, we had a nice grade on him and felt like, I mean, it was pretty obvious as you're sitting there watching the draft go and you kind of got this one name sitting over there and we'd been sitting around for a while, really all the 3rd, all the 4th, and a little bit of the 5th before we got an opportunity to pick. So, and a lot of the 2nd. So we sat around for a little while and that name just kept staring at us, and so when it became our time to pick, it was, really obvious that was the right choice.
So to me, one of the telling things there of the Saints draft strategy is, this is a guy they were watching, right?
Oh, yeah.
When he says the name is staring at you, it's because you're like, this is a guy we want. We have to wait. And one of the reasons this pick feels like such a good value is because
They didn't get
like,
impatient.
In past years, you might have seen them say, I think he's going to go. We're gonna ship out a couple extra assets, go up and get this guy, make sure we get our guy. They didn't do that this year. They allowed the board to come to them, and I think that's a strategy you got to you want him to take, right? Like, especially for a guy who we don't even know if he's going to beat out Jake Haener, right? Like, he's going to compete with Jake Haener for the backup role this year, and maybe Kellen Mond. It's kind of funny because Kellen. Prior to this, I would say Kellen is going to be in competition with Jake Haener. Now Kellen kind of feels like a tutor.
That QB2 battle, and even before, like Spencer Rattler was the pick, was always going to be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And now it's
Now it's
super
very interesting.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't remember. I can't remember the Saints having 5 quarterbacks, and that's not even including Taysom Hill. They have 5 quarterbacks in the room right now.
Yeah, it's Peterman, it's Hayner, it's Mond, it's Carr, and it's now Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, and you're gonna want to. That's going to be the interesting thing to watch. Independent of that too. How many QB reps do you get Taysom? Because you do want to get him some QB reps. So like a lot of times you'll have like a day, okay, this is a Taysom QB day. You're going to have so many, you only have so many reps to throw around. Who's actually getting reps?
Back to Rattler, when the guys were talking to him after he got picked, he seemed really intelligent.
Yes.
That was something that jumped off the page to me.
Very mature.
Like when
Right.
listening to him, very mature, very intelligent, a lot different from like the persona that he had with that QB1
Right,
show.
that's why you go back and you watch those clips from that show and you're like, this is the same guy?
He seems to have very much matured, and
Yeah.
once again, a humbling experience can do that to someone. But with Rattler, the way he was talking about his mechanics, I thought that kind of stood out to me as well. A lot of great lower body mechanics when he's throwing, or with his throwing motion.
Yeah.
Mike kind of pointed out that his throwing motion, like the actual
pure.
throw,
It's
it
clean.
looks like
Right.
a shortstop in
Yeah.
baseball. And he talked about his background. He played all these different sports. He did play shortstop when
He's
he
had the
was growing
same
up in
QB
pitcher.
coach since he was like 12 years old, which
Yeah.
I think is helpful.
And he's kind of refined those mechanics. He's
Yeah.
worked on it. He said he loves. He done it. What stood out to me as well was when he was asked about who he models his game after. He said he doesn't really want to model his game after anyone in particular, but he loves watching tape. I thought that was pretty interesting. He loved watching tape of like Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers. I'm trying to figure. Matt Stafford was the third one that he used. Those are 3 pretty good quarterbacks that kind of take stuff to add to your game from. So Spencer Rattler, super, super intriguing pick. I mean, once again, as I mentioned earlier, I texted my buddy when the pick was made. It's just like, this is a high ceiling but low risk pick. And that's kind of what you're looking for on day 3, and especially in round 5. And what DA had said about the quarterback, situation in the draft, when they were asking him, did you try to trade up to go get a quarterback in the first round? He's just like, that was never a question.
Yeah.
That was never a question at all on day 1. And they said that they had their eyes on Rattler and they just let him fall to them at pick 150. And once he was there, I mean, once again, the value play, the best player available on the board, you can't pass up.
Well, I mean, every year we talk, like I bring this up because it's true. Like we talk about, why do we spend so much time at the Senior Bowl talking about the Senior Bowl? Why do I, invest so much of my energy in like, well, this guy was at the Senior Bowl, so I'm going to make sure I know I have a good read on him, because that's what the Saints do.
So Fuanga was there.
Yes.
Kool-Aid, I think, got an
Kool-Aid
invite,
was
but he
not
was
there.
not
No.
there because he was dealing with the foot injury.
Spencer was there.
Spencer was there.
I don't know about I'd have to double
Yeah,
check
we'll
on the
have to
other
double
guys. I
check
don't
the-
think
the
Bub
later
was
one.
not there.
Was Boyd there?
Boyd might have been there. He was East West Shrine.
Yes, that's right. Same thing with Azirum was
Yeah.
an East West Shrine guy, and that's where Jari Evans had worked with.
But it's like every year you can pretty much bank at least 2 picks from the Senior Bowl. The Saints currently have 3 Senior Bowl MVPs from the game.
They love it, man.
in their quarterback room.
So start putting that in every mock,
Right.
every single time.
So Kellen Mond was 2021, right? Jake Hayner was 2023, and Spencer Rattler was 2024. All 3 of these guys were not just at the Senior Bowl; they were the MVP of the
MVP.
Senior Bowl.
Saints love
so
their Senior Bowl guys.
They really do, and it's you understand why, because you get a lot of top prospects there, especially now with the juniors allowed to go. So that kind of adds an extra level. It's a situation where these guys actually compete against each other.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like the combine where you're just doing drills and everyone looks great in shorts. It's not like a pro day where you're just doing drills and everyone looks great in shorts and you make sure they have a tailwind when they're running their 40. Like, this is a situation where they're going against someone who wants to make them look bad because they want to make themselves look good, right? Like, you're not getting someone who's out there just, going through the motions because they're working for you. This is someone competing with you, and I think that gives you a picture of a prospect that you do not get from a lot of these scouting events, from a lot of these workouts, and so every year we talk about this. The Saints value it. They have the ability to just put their entire scouting staff in a minivan and drive 2 hours to Mobile.
Right.
And, it's going to be this case. It was the case this year. It's going to be the case next year. Do not sleep on the Senior Bowl when it comes to the Saints in the draft.
I'm double checking real quick here. I think Jordan Jefferson was at the Senior Bowl, the LSU defensive
He
tackle.
got in a fight with Christian Haynes.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I was about to point out, was that kind of fight that everyone saw. Like, you're looking at guys that are really trying to make themselves look impressive. Like, they're getting physical with each other. And
Trevor Penning was there too, doing the same thing.
Leatu Latu was at the Senior Bowl as well, right? So,
yes.
I mean, going back to Talisa Fuanga, like,
And they competed.
you
Right.
saw like the reps that they had against each other. And I feel like I don't want to say we glossed over Fuanga because I think that he's an immediate impact player, a plug-and-play type of guy at right tackle. But when you talk about him as the best right tackle in the class as far as run blocking goes, he was also a really damn good pass protector. Like, he was a really improved pass protector as well. So you were seeing him go up against the first defensive player taken in the 2024 NFL draft in, like, one-on-one reps.
And winning them.
And he was standing up to him. Like, against Leatu Latu, who the Colts obviously felt comfortable making the first defensive player off the board after the first 14 players were offensive pieces. And I think here's a stat for you, Jeff. This was via PFF a couple weeks ago. Taliese Fuanga gave up Taliesin. Sorry, I'm getting in Steve's head. No, I know it's Taliesin. Steve keeps getting me mentally, whatever. Gave up 0 sacks on 734 pass blocking snaps in his time at Oregon State. So not only is he just a mauling run blocking right tackle, the best in the class, he's really, really solid at pass protection as well. Great pick at 14 overall.
I agree. And so to me, I know Cullen's getting angry. He's giving the snap motion. When you're talking about names, my opinion, you got a year, right? So if you're still saying, here's the thing, if you're still saying Brian Breesy, if you're saying Brzee wrong, that's on you at this point. So if you're still saying the wrong,
I got Taliesin over the weekend. Man, I'm upset with myself.
I absolutely love it. I love that Mike Haas's first question to all of them were pronunciation.
Well, it's important to him because
I know it's important to him.
It's like literally his profession.
But I'm happy he asked it.
He's got to say these names correctly, fast, and under stress.
Right.
So I understand where he's at. Back to football. Charlie Long. I'm Jeff Nowak. Cullen Steele at the controls. And, we're going to say back to football. We got a text early in the day saying, please don't talk about the Pelicans.
This is all draft,
on the Oakland Heart Jewelers Talking text. I only bring up one thing about the Pelicans.
Oh, no, don't do it, Jeff.
And it's that the Pelicans are so bad right now that Galveston, Texas is catching strays. I like Galveston. Have you ever been to Galveston? It's great mini golf. The beaches are fine.
Shout out to Charles Barkley.
Charles Barkley, what a great line. I was dying. I was half asleep this morning catching up to that clip. And he's just Galveston,
Don't even
Texas.
send him to Cancun. Send him to Galveston, Texas.
Oh, it was such a deep burn. Burn, but it was a great moment. It was earned. But no, we're not going to talk about the Pelicans. They're going to get swept and we're going to be fine. I don't know. That's a whole nother conversation.
Keep on with the Rattler Hour, Jeff.
Yes, we're back to the Rattler Hour. And what I want to hear from is Shane Beamer, head coach at South Carolina, my dog's favorite head coach. And we're gonna get into it. This is Shane Beamer speaking with Saints media about Spencer Rattler after the Saints took him at number 150 overall. Cullen, hit it.
Hey, Coach. Thanks for doing this. Just let's start off. What are the Saints getting with Spencer Rattler?
I think they're getting a guy with a huge upside, fantastic person, somebody that I obviously, have been around since 2019 when we were together at Oklahoma. So I think he's been through so much adversity. His story is he's weathered some storms from what happened at Oklahoma, some of the adversity he dealt with here at South Carolina with injuries and whatnot. But he's extremely talented. He's extremely hardworking. He's humble. And I know he's eager to get to work out there.
What do you remember from him, like when you guys when he transferred to South Carolina, just at the end of that Oklahoma experience? What was he kind of like, and how did you kind of see him maybe take that and learn from it?
Yeah, I was fortunate that we were together at Oklahoma. I've known Spencer since he was a senior, I guess junior in high school, his junior year, when we were recruiting him at Oklahoma. I saw him come into Oklahoma. I think that I don't want to speak for him, but I would imagine coming to Oklahoma when he did was a great experience because our starting quarterback when he got there was Jalen Hurts. So he was able to see how Jalen acclimated coming from Alabama to Oklahoma. And I would imagine that helped Spencer when he came from Oklahoma to South Carolina. And then certainly when he chose South Carolina, you're talking about a guy that going into the 2021 season, he was everybody's projected number 1 pick in the NFL draft. And he was on the, one of the favorites to win the Heisman Trophy. And the season didn't turn out the way that he wanted. But from talking to people at Oklahoma, they had nothing but great things to say about him, how he handled that situation with Caleb and losing his job. And then it spoke volumes about our program that a guy like Spencer Rattler would choose to come here. So that was a big deal when Spencer Rattler made the announcement to come to the South, come join our program. And then when he came in, he was exactly like I thought he would be, hardworking, went right to work, didn't really say a whole lot, just tried to earn the respect of his teammates, and he did. He was a 2-time captain here at Carolina and elevated our program and led us to some big-time wins over the last 2 years.
Coach, obviously, you can't read a story about him. You can't read a scouting report about him where it talks about, the perception of him early on, the adversity he faced. Is it fair that sticks with him, or, is it overhyped, or is it something he really did have to grow from it, and that is part of his good story?
I think the biggest knock on him are people that I think the Netflix show that he did, which I've never watched in my life, but I've heard about this Netflix show that didn't portray him in a good light. But I can't imagine many people at the age of 17 would be proud of a Netflix show that was done on them. And then particularly with that, when you're part of a reality show like that, the producers, they can twist and shape the narrative however they want to make it make some people look a certain way. I never watched it. All I knew was what I saw with my own eyes, and I saw the way that people respected him and liked him in the football facility at Oklahoma. I know his family and how grounded he is. His mom and dad are awesome. If his dad ever called me during his time here at Carolina, it was only to thank me for the experience that Spencer was having at South Carolina. And his mom and dad are fantastic. Whole family's great. He's great, so whatever that narrative is on the outside, if people are basing that off of something that he did at the age of 17, then in my opinion, shame on them. He's grown so much and has the respect of so many.
And then we just talked to Coach Loggins about those scouting reports also talk about how pro-ready, quote unquote, his arm is, the system he played in, the throws he can make. I mean, is that true that the talent he's working with is even more pro-ready than we'll find with a lot of guys making that transition from college?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think mentally he's going to be ahead of the time because he's really played in 3 different systems. He played in Lincoln Riley's system at Oklahoma. His first year here in 2022, we had a different offensive coordinator, Marcus Satterfield. He's at Nebraska now. And then Dow Loggins came in. And Marcus had spent some time in the NFL with the Panthers. Dow's obviously his whole career has been in the NFL. And we didn't change a lot when Dow came in, but there were some differences in some terminology and how he was coached and things like that as well. And Dow is a longtime coordinator and quarterback coach in the NFL, so that'll help Spencer. So mentally, I think he's going to be farther along than most quarterbacks because of what he's been exposed to. But then the talent speaks for itself. I mean, he can make any throw on the field. He's made some miraculous throws not miraculous, but impressive throws over the last couple of years. He can throw on the run. And he's a better athlete than people give him credit for, too. Whatever his 40 time was, 4.9 or whatever I heard. He's a better athlete than people give him credit for. He's made some runs here in the last couple years and for us. And I think he's got just a big upside and his best football's in front of him.
Coach, was he a different type of player at South Carolina? Was he a little bit more relaxed? Did you see that in him?
Maybe a little bit. I don't know. To me, that's one of Spencer's greatest strengths is his steadiness. He doesn't get too high. He doesn't get too low. I think that's an amazing quality in a quarterback and what, Coach Allen wants out of his quarterbacks there in New Orleans. And that's Spencer. So to me, he was very much the same guy. He was probably a little bit, more battle-tested, seasoned, mature, whatever. That's what, adversity and years will do to you, but I never once thought he was more relaxed. I mean, he's a guy, I've said this before publicly. I mean, he dealt with adversity at Oklahoma before, everybody makes a big deal out of getting benched to Caleb. But people forget, when Spencer took over as the starting quarterback at Oklahoma, he was replacing Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and Jalen Hurts. And then he takes over as the starting quarterback. And we at Oklahoma, with him as our starting quarterback, we immediately lose our first 2 Big 12 games that year. We lose to Kansas State at home, and then we go up on the road and we lose to Iowa State. So here's this young freshman quarterback that's replacing 3 pros, and he starts out 1-2, but he never flinched. We went and played Texas that year, Coach Riley actually benched him in the first half of the Texas game in 2020, and then he put Spencer back in the game. He leads us to like a 4 overtime victory, and then doesn't lose a game the rest of his career at Oklahoma. Leads us to a Big 12 championship. Then the next year, all the hype is about him going into the season. He loses his job, but throughout all that, in 2020, the highs and the lows, coming to South Carolina, I think that's one of his greatest strengths. He was the same guy all along, and I didn't really notice a difference when he was here.
What type of growth did you see in him on the field, specifically kind of the last 2 years at South Carolina?
I think a lot. He really committed to getting in here, and our system is completely different than what the system he ran at Oklahoma, and our Oklahoma with Coach Riley. So he really committed to getting in here, and I think off the field, learning our system for one, but just really trying to understand defenses and what they were doing. I mean, I spent all my time, or most of my time, in the quarterback meetings here at Carolina, and every time I walked in there, I mean, he's in there all the time. He's taking notes. He's on his iPad, and really worked to understand the game better. And then on the field, I think just probably the biggest thing, and he continued to work on the fundamental part of it, and getting better there with Dow, and then just he's grown so much because, to me, the adversity he's faced here. I mean, our offense last season, our offensive line was decimated by injuries. And we lost 6 offensive linemen to season-ending injuries last season. We started 2 true freshmen on the offensive line last season in what I consider the toughest conference in America that has the best defenses in America. So it wasn't an easy road to hoe for him last season, but I know from talking to a lot of NFL teams, that's one thing that really resonated with him, was just how he handled that. You never saw him getting frustrated. You never saw him pointing fingers. He was positive. One of my favorite moments from last season is he throws the game-winning touchdown pass against Kentucky late in the game. And on that play, we had a true freshman running back that hadn't really played much throughout the season that was in the game because of injuries. And he picked up a blitzing linebacker, and that allowed Spencer to step up in the pocket and throw the touchdown pass to Xavier Legette. And, our in-house media team caught it. And as soon as that play's over, you see Spencer come up to the freshman running back and tell him what a great job that was on that play to pick up that linebacker. And that's just who he is. And I know that impressed a lot of teams, and that's the kind of guy the Saints are getting.
All right, that was South Carolina head coach, Gamecocks head coach Shane Beamer.
Beamer ball.
I don't know if it's technically Beamer ball if he does. I think that's Willie Beamer.
Yeah, I'm just.
Or is it Willie Beamer? What is the old Beamer?
Frank
Beamer?
Frank Beamer.
I'm thinking Willie Beeman.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, who's
That's the guy
Beamer?
from Any Given Sunday.
Is there like a grandpa I just don't know about?
Willie Beeman. Jamie Foxx, best best quarterback of all time. One of the top fake quarterbacks you'll ever see. Yeah. It kind of reminds me, so Taliesin Fuanga, just for a quick aside.
Yeah.
When he was asked, like, how do you get nasty? And he says, he's just like, well, I think about, like, these guys talk about my mom, like Bobby Boucher. So anyway, we could have a whole segment on our rankings.
I was double checking this. It is Frank Beamer.
It's Frank Beamer. Virginia Tech, right? Beamer ball.
The picture that I love from Frank Beamer is: have you ever seen like the 0-0 score line between Virginia Tech and Wake Forest at the end of regulation? Like, there was such a disgustingly ugly game in college football, and it's just a picture. I'll have to show it to you during a break of Frank Beamer, and he's so fired up. He's like, "We're going to OT, and it is 0-0."
Just like we drew it up.
It's one of my favorite college football pictures.
But all right, back to Rattler. Yeah, Shane says Rattler. I don't know. I am
Is
curious.
that an accent thing?
I
maybe?
don't know, but I think it's Rattler.
I think it's Rattler.
You think it's Rattler, like a D?
Rattler.
No,
that's just my accent. Rattler.
So you think it's Rattler?
Rattler.
Because I've heard Rattler, I've heard Rattler, I've heard Rattler.
I think it's with T's.
I think it's like a rattlesnake.
Yeah.
No.
So, anyways.
Okay. So yeah, we way aside. But one of the things that he talked about, and I think this is the real conversation, is okay. Why did Spencer Rattler fall so far? And they talk about the QB1 show, and like you say, hey, no one's really talking about that. They're talking about the tape. They're talking about the interviews. But no, Ian Rappaport, he came out and said, this is something that people are actually, like, it's hard to erase that memory, that image of him, like, just trashing his backup because there's a clip on Twitter now of the backups missing throws in a QB drill, and he's just trashing them and he's breaking them down. And I think that is weighing on people, and it's probably not fair,
and
right?
Because he was 17 years old. And once again, Rappaport is on this. Ian Rappaport from NFL Network has reported that
this isn't something we're making up.
No, it's not at all. That like the perception that some NFL front offices got from him from a show that was recorded when he was 17 years old is part of the reason. Like they're taking the talent and the arm talent and the production in college out of it, and they're looking at character concerns. And some of those teams didn't want to spend a day 2 pick on this guy. And that's why he fell into the 4th and into the 5th round. And at that point, it's just like the Saints, this is worth a shot.
Yeah.
So, and as Beamer was saying, it's not really fair to Spencer.
You mature.
Yeah, to kind of judge
right.
him on a show that was recorded when he was 17 years old.
Here's the thing. If that's really why he's there in the 5th round, I feel even better about that pick.
100%.
Because, yes, you can grow.
Because you heard him talk.
Think about yourself as a 17-year-old person. Are you the same person you were at 17? You don't think that the values you have as a person, I'm 34 now. I'm twice as old as I was at 17. I shudder to think if I was the same person emotionally right now as I was at 17, who would I be as a person?
And you heard him talk in our interview with WWL Radio. He talked to the media as well. On top of that, he sounded like a really mature, good
is it
individual.
an act? Are you saying that? Right.
He's coming on to the station and he's introducing himself to the Who Dat Nation, the team that just spent a draft pick on him, kind of fulfilled his dream of playing in the NFL. And he's going to come on and have an act that he's a mature guy now? No, get out of here.
And if the video of him getting picked, he's kind of like, this is a reset, right? This is all I needed. We're starting from here.
Yes.
That's no longer a part of the conversation.
He's got his opportunity.
That's the last time he has the answer about that is, I'm on an NFL team now. We're going to get this going. And I think that's, I'm again, if that's why he's there, if that's why he dropped, I feel even better about it.
I agree.
Because I think that is, really just
it's ludicrous,
foolish.
Man.
All right, again, that was the Spencer Rattler segment. I think we got some good mileage out of that. But we're going to hit the break here. We're going to come back one more segment where we're going to go around the NFC South, kind of look at some of the other draft classes and how we feel about them. And yes, we're going to shit on the Falcons for a good bit, as any good Saints podcast, as any Saints podcast worth its salt will gladly do at any given opportunity. So again, I'm Jeff Nowak. This is Inside Black and Gold. Stick around. All right, one more trip around the sun on this draft recap episode of Inside Black and Gold. This last segment, we're going to dive into some of the other draft classes in the NFC South, give them some grades, give it our take on those picks. Obviously, we're going to have some feelings about the Michael Penix pick. We're not going to be done talking about that. We're going to get plenty of mileage out of that. But again, this is myself, Charlie Long, Cullen Steele on our draft recap show. Here you go.
All right, getting down toward crunch time on our WWL draft recap show. These last 20 minutes or so, we're going to roll around the NFC South, kind of talk about some of these other classes, see how other teams did. Not a lot of grades being handed out that are as promising as the Saints in terms of the analysts.
Let me actually go take a look at that. PFF gave the Saints an A+. Let me see what they did.
We haven't really talked about that, but PFF loves the Saints draft.
I love it too. I'm right there with them.
There's a few draft classes in here that are interesting. I think considering they went in without a first-round pick and the trade for last year to go up and get Bryce Young was so brutal from a value perspective for the Panthers. I think they came away with a sneaky good class. I think Xavier Legette at number 32 overall, they traded up one pick. I thought was a great get at that spot, gives Bryce Young a weapon. So they're not giving up on Bryce Young. So getting him talented wide receivers is obviously helpful. And it also does help when you don't have the number one overall pick, but you are picking first in the second, third, fourth rounds. So that does help you. I also thought that the probably the biggest steal, one of the bigger steals of this draft was Jatavian Sanders at the first pick of the fourth round. This is a guy that a lot of people had a second-round grade on. So you're talking about Bryce Young, right? Everyone's saying a lot of people have given up on Bryce Young. The Panthers have not given up on Bryce Young.
They can't.
Because they can't. They've added offensive line help, and they gave him a top-end wide receiver option and a really high upside tight end option to at least give him a chance, right?
Shout out Robert Hunt, former Raging Cajun, picking up a $100 million contract in the offseason. So that's interior offensive line help for Bryce Young.
And then the other guy before, Jonathan Brooks, obviously. So you gave this guy a wide receiver, a running back, and a tight end. So you can no longer say that
one of them.
They have not invested in Bryce Young's supporting cast.
So let's talk a little bit about this because PFF gave it a C. they gave the Panthers a C. And I think that's
about the trade, right? I think that's just the value you could get out of this. Like, a C is an A, in my opinion. I think a C is their ceiling. Given what they had to work with.
It was tough. They get back into the first round to get Xavier Legette. I really do like Xavier Legette. I was kind of hoping he would be there at 45.
Yeah.
Ends up being the final pick of the first round. They go up and make sure that they get him instead of Buffalo. I think Buffalo was fine with it. Maybe they had Keon higher on their board, and that's why they were cool with moving to the first pick of the second round.
Maybe they didn't lie, and they were just like, we're going to take a wide receiver, guys.
Yeah, I don't know. So you're looking at Carolina. Xavier Legette, I think, is a good pick for them. We saw Spencer Rattler was impressing at his pro day, but the guy that was also super impressive was Xavier Legette, who he was throwing to at his pro day at South Carolina. So Jonathan Brooks is an interesting one, the first running back off the board, the most talented guy at the running back position in this class. He's coming off an ACL injury.
Right.
So he had surgery, I think about...
And Texas running backs are easy to like.
Yeah, so he's coming off of that, but they're obviously very confident in him. They used a second-round pick. He was, once again, the first running back off the board. Trevin Wallace, the third guy that they took in the third round with the 72nd overall pick. I think the issue with Wallace that's kind of come out with him is that he's really, really athletic, but he's not a great cover linebacker, which you kind of need to be in the modern day NFL. So I don't know how I feel about that one. And then once again, Jatavian Sanders, that's a really solid value play. If you're looking at the tight end class, we talked a little bit about this in the first hour, that it was Brock Bowers and then everyone else. But a lot of people really did have Jatavian Sanders as the second best tight end. And the fact that
Mike
he was
Detillier
there,
did. If you trust Mike's rankings, which I do.
And he fell into the fourth round. And as Mike kind of mentioned about him, you're not getting this guy to be a blocking tight end. You're getting him to be a pass catcher. Yeah. And so that's what they got there. And once again, it kind of helps Bryce Young's development, getting a guy like him that can do a lot of work over the middle of the field. So I think C is okay.
It's funny. A lot of future SEC in this, because you got a South Carolina guy, a Kentucky guy, and then two Texas guys.
Yeah.
Which they're not in the SEC yet, but they will be.
I think, C is pretty fair for this Carolina Panthers draft class. I would say it's probably around there. They did the most with what they had.
Again,
basically.
It's like you I don't know what your grade, how high your grade could have possibly been, right? Like when you
lost the number one overall pick.
Like that grade has to envelop the trade from last year, which it's kind of like
you started out in a big hole.
It's the same reason, like for the Saints, one of the reasons I give the first round pick an A- is not because I don't like the pick. It's because you set yourself in a situation where A- was kind of your ceiling.
Yeah.
Because of what you had to do. I also, the Bills trade is going to be fascinating because if they were not, if they had like a perfectly even grade on Legette and Keon, then sure. But it's weird because if you had a higher grade on Legette and you said, yeah, that extra pick that we're going to pick up is worth it, and he ends up being the star and Keon falls off, then that's a terrible trade. I think it's more likely that they had a higher grade on Keon anyway.
Yeah.
And they were just like, yeah, sure, give us whatever.
Yeah, go get your guy.
Because they knew they were going to. Like, I think, and here's the thing. That's why kind of, tipping your pitches as a drafting team is difficult because the Bills knew the Panthers wanted to get Legette. The Panthers did not have any idea where the Bills stood on Keon.
I think they were nervous that the Bills could have taken Xavier
Right.
Legette,
That's why being coy and smoke screening is helpful because they were able. I think what happened is they wanted Keon anyway, and they were like, they kind of just forecast, hey, we're going to take a wide receiver here. How you feeling? And the Panthers were like, what if they take Xavier? What if they take Xavier?
We got to go get this guy.
And so they gave up. So I think that's a masterful job by the Bills to steal value out of that.
And now we'll see if it works out. But now you're looking at the Carolina Panthers before we move on. And who do you want to do next? You want to do Tampa Bay?
I want to do Tampa Bay because I want to save the final segment for our Falcons hate segment.
What is your grade for the Carolina Panthers?
The Carolina Panthers, I give them a B just because, it's funny because I'm grading them on a curve, right?
Yeah.
I
think Dan Morgan did a solid job. It's just,
just on the picks.
Yeah, the picks themselves.
Ignoring the trade, ignoring the fact that they didn't have a first-round pick. Just on the selections they had to make, I think I'd give them a B.
I think the C- or C+ B- kind of tiers where I would
and like again, like I'm removing the ceiling that would exist based on that trade because I do think they got fleeced a little bit on the Xavier Legette pick. He would have been there on the first pick of the third round, and they kind of got baited. Otherwise, I think they did a great job. Anyway, let's move forward. Let's talk about the Bucs.
Yes.
What was your kind of read on the Bucs? It's not an exciting list of names.
I think that there's some good names on there. I really do. Graham Barton with the first round pick at 26, 100%. I thought that he was going to be the guy that went to maybe Miami or potentially Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh had Troy Fautanu fall into their lap.
Graham's funny too because kind of like Troy, it's like he played left tackle, but they're projecting him as a guard. Graham Barton, they're projecting him as a center. He didn't really play a ton of center in his final year at Duke.
Yeah, so you're looking at Graham Barton. They're going to have him as an interior guy to start off. Ryan Jensen retires.
I assume so.
Center. Yes.
That's 100%. What I assume is going to happen, but who knows? Maybe Tampa's looking at him as a tackle. We really don't know.
You're right. Who does know? That's just how I would project it. Edge Chris Braswell from Alabama. I think that's a solid pick in the second round.
Any Alabama edge rusher feels like a solid pick.
Yeah, exactly. Tyke Smith from Georgia is safety in the third round. They had a second third round pick. They took Jalen McMillan, who I really like from Washington. That Washington wide receiver trio of McMillan and Polk and Odunze was just so ridiculous. And you're looking at, we'll talk a little bit about Michael Penix in a little bit here, but the passing numbers that he put up, that receiving trio had a lot to do with that. I think he's still a great quarterback, by the way. That's not me kind of throwing any kind of shade on Michael Penix. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could say the same thing about Jaden Daniels. He was throwing two first-round wide receivers he was throwing to.
I agree, but just once again, it was a really talented receiving core that he was throwing to from Washington, and that's why they made such a great season, made a run all the way to the national championship game. Bucky Irving from Oregon, who is one of the more divisive running back prospects in this class. You either love him and you love his speed and how electric he is, or you hate him. And he can catch the ball out of the backfield, but he's so small and he's just kind of like doesn't have the best vision, So I think that it's a pretty interesting class. I think the Buccaneers class is better than the Panthers class. I don't think it's as good as the Saints, and PFF agrees. They gave Buccaneers an A.
They gave him an A.
They gave him an A. I think that it's a solid class. I would probably go around A- to B+. Once again, kind of the tweener tier. Like I was looking at with the Panthers, I would say C+, B-. Looking at the Buccaneers, those picks. I like Graham Barton. I like Chris Braswell, Jalen McMillan as well. Bucky Irving, I'm kind of up in the air about. I would say it's kind of like a B+ to A- for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, that seems fair. It really depends on if these defensive players hit. The Bucs are in an interesting position because they have these elite wide receivers. It's really a question, is Baker Mayfield the guy? Right? Is Baker Mayfield the guy that you can look at over the next 4 to 5 years and say, he's our quarterback and we're going to build around him as opposed to finding his replacement? Because I thought this was a draft where if it went a certain way, you could have found a quarterback that had some upside. Now, they seem like a team that would have benefited from a Spencer Rattler pick.
They decided
and they did not do that.
Yep, they're sticking with their guys.
Like a Michael Pratt would have made a ton of sense there because they don't really have a background guy. But I would give them a B. I think the Panthers and Bucs classes are very similar, in my opinion.
I think the Bucs is definitely better. It's a step above.
More of a meat and potatoes.
Yeah, I would agree.
They got the Bucs really looked at the defense. The Panthers really looked at the offense.
And got some kind of weapons for Bryce. And I understand that. It's still like a B- for me. So where I think the kind of Buccaneers is like a B+ to A-.
I agree. But all right, this is our WWL draft
You're not getting away, Falcons. We're coming for you.
We're coming for you. I wanted to save as much time as possible so I could trash the Falcons draft because that's what we do. It's a good
terrible.
way to end the show. To Cullen Steele for guiding us through this mess of a recap, but that's fine.
Oh, I think the real mess is what we're about to talk about.
Yes, the true. Yeah, you ruined my segue. Anyway, I'm sorry. But yeah, we're gonna use this last segment to trash the Falcons a little bit. Because you can make arguments that their draft wasn't as terrible as it's gonna be made out to be by us, but we're in New Orleans, so we're gonna do it. But obviously, we don't need to go through the entire class. I thought Rook Ororo was I think I got it right there.
Rororo.
It's kind of, you just kind of make.
You said it's like row.
If you've ever heard a husky that talks a lot, it's kind of what it is. Like row. Anyway, he's a defensive tackle. Another
Clemson.
guy you could argue was overdrafted out of Clemson.
100%.
He's probably a third round value. They took him in the second round, ahead of Johnny Newton.
Everyone's got different big boards, and maybe they had him as like a full on second round grade.
If Johnny Newton was off the board, that's one thing. They took him ahead of Johnny Newton.
Before Johnny Newton. Johnny Newton was, I think, either the next player taken or a couple picks after that. He was a first round talent.
I think Terry's overthinking himself a little bit.
I think so too.
He's pressing.
Johnny Newton was a really solid prospect. I think a lot of people maybe even had him first round, and he falls into the second, and the Falcons straight up, you're thinking, oh, they're going to go get Johnny Newton, and then they take Rook Ororo, who is maybe a third round grade at best, like you were saying. The Falcons obviously had a higher grade on them than a lot of people did, but that felt like a reach for one. Yeah. There wasn't the only reach they had.
But let's we can't get out of this without talking about Michael Penix extensively. So I want to talk about Michael Penix. They take him at number 8 overall. My biggest issue with it is, one of the reasons that rookie quarterbacks on rookie deals are so valuable is because the contract is very reasonable relative to what quarterbacks make, what your starting quarterbacks make.
Yep.
That's true to an extent. It's not true when that quarterback is signing a $4 year, $22 million deal to be your backup. Think about that. How much are you paying a backup? So you've drafted a guy that's not going to play and is also going to get paid a high-end contract. Now, people are saying, hey, this is kind of like drafting Jordan Love. No, because Jordan Love is the 26th pick. The contract for the 26th pick is like a 4-year, $7 million deal. So that's very reasonable for your backup quarterback money. $22 million contract for your backup? What backup in the NFL commands that type of contract? None.
And so I think the Jordan Love comparison is really kind of dumb in a sense. Like, I can understand like where they're coming from. Oh, we're going to have this guy and send him for a couple of years. Jordan Love, once again, as you mentioned, the 26th overall pick on the
Graham
2020
Barton
draft.
was the 26th overall pick for what it's worth.
Right. So once again, Jordan Love was the 26th overall pick. He was, I think, 20 when he was coming out. Yeah. Michael Penix is going to be 24 in about a week, basically. So you're drafting an NFL-ready guy. Like, had they, and we talked a little bit about this off air, had they drafted someone like J.J. McCarthy that is more of a developmental quarterback, I would have been a little bit like more understanding about the pick. Kirk Cousins was fuming about it. You drafted a guy that's ready to play now. Michael Penix threw for almost 5,000 yards last season in college football at Washington. Once again, he had a very talented trio of receivers that he was throwing to. Great production at the FBS level. He's ready to go.
Yeah,
this is a guy that you would draft if you needed a quarterback to start on day one.
You can't have it both ways, right? Either you feel like you're so confident in this guy that you're going to take him at number 8 overall, and you feel like, hey, this is the guy, this is our future. You think he's a developmental guy. You can't have both ways.
I think back to looking at Terry Fontenot trying to explain the pick to Arthur Blank and the War Room, and it was just so funny because it doesn't make any sense. People can argue, oh yeah, no, it makes sense. Like, they really love the guy, and that with quarterbacks nowadays, if you get a legitimate quarterback, they can play for a decade plus, right? And even with Michael Penix sitting for a couple of years, he could play for a decade and go on to be a really great quarterback. I'm not judging Penix as a player. I'm judging the pick. You spent $180 million, $100 million guaranteed on Kirk Cousins on a 4-year contract, and you go out and get his replacement with the 8th overall pick instead of improving the roster that you have now to make a run at the postseason. It doesn't make any sense.
I will say they had one pick that I do really like, and it was Braylon Trice out of Washington.
Great production
in the third round. We don't have a ton of time to talk about it, but I think he's going to end up being the best pick out of this draft for them, and that's saying something because they picked at number 8 overall.
I mean, the Penix pick was just so head-scratching. So the Falcons, my grade real quick for them, C minus, if not D.
I'd go in the C's. Yeah, and it depends. If Penix pans out, then it goes up.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Inside Black and Gold. Obviously, thanks everyone for listening. You got all the way to the end. Gold star. We went through all the Saints picks, all the UDFAs. We dove headlong into Spencer Rattler. We heard from Shane Beamer, Dennis Allen. We talked about all the draft picks in the NFC South. We crapped on Michael Penix, even though I like Michael Penix. I just don't like how Michael Penix ended up where he is. But hey, not my problem. Either way, we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. We'll be coming at you this week. We're going to get Steve Geller, obviously, back on here. We'll have plenty of draft talk to get into, but I did want to get you a full recap episode. This version was popular last year, so I wanted to do it again. If you have any suggestions, any desires of what you want to hear, what you'd like us to get into, hit me up on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak. You can follow the show at Saints_pod. Thanks again, Charlie Long, Colin Steele, for helping me put this all together. It was a fun draft. It was a tiring draft. You can probably tell from the bags under my eyes if you're watching this on YouTube, but we have a ton of mileage left to go before we get to the 2024 season. We got rookie minicamp coming up. We got OTAs. We got mandatory minicamp. Then we're going to trek out to Irvine, California for training camp, and I am psyched. I hope you are too. All right. Again, Inside Black and Gold. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. Thanks, everyone, as always, for listening. It's always a lot of fun putting these episodes together. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. Otherwise, we'll see you soon. Who dat? Go Saints. Be easy, y'all. Peace.